Welcome back to our channel. My name is Casey, and here I share outfit ideas, style thoughts, and pieces that have worked for me as someone petite who likes comfort, ease, and clothes that feel good in real life. One of fashion's most controversial companies might be buying one of fashion's most ethical brands. And honestly, I think this story explains a lot about where fashion is headed right now. Because if you've ever tried to shop sustainably, while also trying to stay within budget, while also being petite and struggling to find clothes that actually fit, then you probably already understand the problem. And I think that's why this conversation online feels so divided. Some people are acting shocked, other people are saying this was inevitable. But as someone who talks about fashion from a petite perspective, I think this situation reveals a much bigger truth. A lot of people want ethical fashion, but fashion has never made ethical shopping equally accessible, and petite shoppers know that better than anyone. So here's the quick version of what's happening. Everlane built its identity around radical transparency. Minimalist basics, cleaner branding, ethical manufacturing, better fabrics, timeless essentials. It became one of the biggest millennial conscious fashion brands during the 2010s. Meanwhile, Shein became the complete opposite symbol in fashion culture. Ultra fast fashion, extremely low prices, massive trend turnover, thousands of new products every day, and constant criticism over labor conditions, environmental concerns, and overconsumption. So, when reports started circulating that Shein may acquire Everlane, people online completely lost it. Because symbolically, it feels like the king of ultra-fast fashion absorbing one of the brands that represented ethical shopping. And to some people, it feels depressing, like sustainable fashion officially lost. But honestly, I do not think this happened because people suddenly stopped caring about sustainability. I think it happened because sustainable fashion never fully solved the problems most shoppers actually deal with, especially petite shoppers. I think a lot of fashion conversations online assume everyone has the same access to clothing, but petite shoppers know that's just not true. If you're petite, shopping can honestly feel exhausting sometimes. Pants are too long. Blazers swallow your frame. Maxi skirts drag on the floor. Oversized trends become ridiculously oversized. And tailoring? People online love saying, just tailor it. But tailoring costs money. And if you're tailoring every pair of pants, every blazer sleeve, every dress hem, suddenly that investment piece becomes even more expensive. So, when people ask why so many petite girls still shop fast fashion, I think the answer is more complicated than people want to admit. A lot of petite shoppers are not choosing fast fashion because they love overconsumption. Sometimes they choose it because traditional fashion has ignored them for years. And this is the uncomfortable part of the conversation because people love criticizing Shein, but clearly millions of consumers still shop there. So we have to ask why. And honestly, fast fashion solved problems traditional fashion ignored. It made trends accessible. It made experimentation affordable. It gave people options. And during a time where inflation is affecting literally everything, affordability matters more than ever. Because most people are not building perfect capsule wardrobes filled with ethically sourced linen basics. Most people are trying to survive while still wanting to feel good in what they wear. And I think fashion discourse online sometimes forgets that, especially when conversations become very moralized. Because it's easy to tell people to shop better when you have money, access, time, and body proportions that most brands already cater to. But if you're petite, curvy, mid-size, plus size, or financially constrained, fashion becomes a completely different experience. And I think that's why this Shein and Everlane conversation feels so emotionally charged. It exposes the gap between fashion ideals and fashion reality. Now, to be clear, I do not think ethical concerns should be ignored. I think labor conditions matter. I think environmental impact matters. And I completely understand why people feel uncomfortable supporting ultra-fast fashion companies. But I also think sustainable fashion branding became overly simplistic. Because for years, the message was basically just buy better. But better is expensive. Better often excludes people. And better only works if consumers actually have accessible alternatives. That's the part the industry never fully solved. And I think that's why so many ethical fashion brands struggled financially. Because consumers might want sustainability in theory, but when prices rise, rent increases, groceries become expensive, and economic uncertainty grows, affordability usually wins. Not because people are evil, but because survival changes priorities. And honestly, I think the Everlane situation symbolizes the collapse of a certain millennial fashion fantasy. The idea that consumers alone could shop their way into a better fashion industry. Because the reality is much more complicated than that. And maybe this is the biggest thing I've been thinking about while watching this conversation unfold. Maybe the problem isn't that people stopped caring about sustainable fashion. Maybe fashion never made sustainability accessible in the first place. Because sustainability without accessibility eventually becomes elitism. And accessibility without sustainability creates waste. That's the contradiction fashion still hasn't figured out. Personally, I think most people are trying to do the best they can within their circumstances. And I think the healthier conversation is not about demanding perfection from consumers. It's about encouraging more intentional shopping habits realistically, buying fewer trend pieces, repeating outfits more confidently, learning fabric composition, investing selectively in categories you wear constantly, shopping secondhand when possible. And honestly, sometimes the most sustainable piece in your wardrobe is simply the one that actually fits you well enough to wear over and over again, especially as a petite person. Because if something fits beautifully, chances are you'll keep reaching for it. And longevity matters more than performative perfection. So, no, I don't think the Shein and Everlane story is just fashion drama. I think it reflects something much bigger. It reflects the tension between ethics and affordability, between ideals and reality, between sustainability and accessibility. And I think petite shoppers understand that tension more intimately than most people realize. Because when fashion consistently fails to accommodate you, practicality starts winning over aspiration very quickly. But I'd genuinely love to know what you think. Do you think sustainable fashion failed? Do you think fast fashion became unavoidable? And do you think fashion can ever become both ethical and accessible at the same time? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and stay around for more petite style thoughts, outfit ideas, and fashion conversations. Thanks for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.